how do I deal with very unhappy people in my life? You don't deal with them. I think the issue really what we're looking at is I don't want unhappy people in my life. That's really what's being said, is that how do I deal with them? You don't want them to be unhappy, but they are unhappy. It would be nice if they were happy all the time, but the issue is not how unhappy they are. The issue is that because that's theirs, they own that. Why are they unhappy? They're unhappy because of their thinking, the way they're looking at life, their approach to life. And that's theirs, and they have to work with that. And you can't change that. And if they come to you and say, look, I feel unhappy about something, then you can talk with them about it, and you can look at it together and see what is the root of their unhappiness. But if they don't come and talk to you about it, then there is no dealing with it. Because that's their business. It's not your business why they're unhappy. They have to be allowed to be unhappy. And how much time you want to spend with somebody who's unhappy, well, that's something else. That's your choice. And if you're unhappy because you're choosing to spend time with people who are unhappy, you have to question that. Why are you unhappy about them and being unhappy? Do you see what I mean? What is it that they need to be a certain way for you to be happy? Is that what we're saying? That your happiness is dependent on them being happy. You see, when we start to look at it, it's actually not even about their unhappiness. It's about the fact that you need them to be a certain way for you to feel happy. But they're not. And that's just what life is. So then you have to ask yourself in it is, what is it in me which needs the other person to turn up in a certain way? They have to turn up in a certain package for me to be happy. They have to act in a certain way. They have to validate me in a certain way for me to be happy. Do you see that it's nothing to do with them? Your happiness is your happiness, is your thinking is what is creating the issue for you with them. You're arriving to the relationship with a certain thinking saying, I can only be happy if the other is happy. And people are happy one day and they're not happy the next. It's like, most people do this all the time. So the real question here is, why do I need the other person to be happy? Why do I need the other person to turn up in a certain way for me to feel happy? What is in that? What do I need from the other person? And as you see it in yourself, you then see it in them as well. And then you're at peace with them and with yourself, in the sense that you turn up to life with an idea that it has to be like this for me to be happy. This person, they are my friend, my best friend, has to be happy. They have to turn up in this way for me to feel happy. Because for everything to be right, life has to look a certain way. Because I feel cared for when my friend is happy with me. Because I feel good about myself when it looks like this. Whatever your mind is saying, whatever the idea is, you arrive to the relationship with. And then you see that thinking is not real. That thinking is based on a conditioned concept which you've accepted. You either inherited it as a young child, you inherited this thinking, and it became part of your main framework of how you think. And then before you know what's happening, you're approaching relationships with that thinking, saying that life has to look like this for me to be happy. And when you're lost in that, you really are unhappy. When you're lost in those things, it really has you. You really feel like the story really feels real. You're completely lost in that. Well, the other person is also caught up in that, and they're also lost in that. And then when you truly see that they're also lost in themselves, lost in their own thinking, they're suffering themselves, and therefore not happy, you see it for what it is. So as you see it in yourself, you see it in them too. So the expectation for the other to be happy, how do I deal with unhappy people? Is you have to see your own thinking that needs them to turn up in a certain way for you to be happy. And I'm not talking about, someone is disrespectful or aggressive, or someone is completely out of order. If you have that in the relationship, obviously you remove yourself from the relationship. You don't allow yourself to be abused. We're not talking about, I'm at peace, I don't need you to turn up in any way, you can abuse me. And this is not it. This is just remaining absolutely real with the fact that you approach the relationship with a preconceived idea in your mind, and the main framework of your head is that the other person has to be like this for me to be happy. That's what we're speaking about. If someone is violent and someone is abusive, you remove yourself. And anyway, and if the other person is just miserable all the time and you don't want to be around that, you also remove yourself. That's equally fine. But what we start to see is that we're saying, no, I'm not happy because this other person doesn't turn up happy. I'm not willing to accept their unconsciousness, their self-suffering, because I want them to be happy around me, because that's what I enjoy. And that's how we get caught in it. That's how we get caught up in it. We start off with the premise that I can only be happy if the picture looks like this. So we look at it one more time. How do I deal with very unhappy people in my life? You don't. You don't deal with them. How do I deal with it in myself? I look in myself to see where I have the resistance and where I have the idea that they should be happy, that they should be joyful. This especially with family members. This is huge with family members. You know, my mum isn't conscious. She's not happy. She goes into these dark places. My dad isn't happy. My dad's so judgmental. But what you're describing, really, what we're describing here is that they are lost inside their own thinking. That's it. That's all right. At a certain stage in life, in consciousness, you will be lost in your own thinking. There is a whole spectrum here. There are those who are utterly lost and those who are enlightened. And there will always be a spectrum. And different people will be at different stages. And that's part of it here. That's part of life. You look around, you'll meet people all the time. One is aware and conscious. The other one is completely unaware and totally egotistical and just all about themselves and just completely unaware. That's life. And you may have been born to those parents who are at any end of that spectrum. Because people are at any end of that spectrum. So therefore you're going to be having relationships with people like that. So in your own family, you will always see that. You will always have those. And it's challenging because you turn up with the concept, this is my mum. That's an idea. My mum should be this way, the concept says. Mum should do this, dad should do that. Yeah, but they didn't, and they don't, and they aren't, and they can't. That's the reality. Why? Because people, and mum and dad are people, are at different stages of their conscious evolution. And some will be awoken and some won't. And that's all right. That's because when I say that's all right, that's what it is. And if it's not all right, it's because you're arriving with an idea which says they have to look like this for me to be happy. They have to be conscious, they have to do this, they have to do that, they have to be not constantly reacting to something. They have to value the same values I have. They have to have the same realizations I have. Yeah, but they don't. So people, unhappy people in your life, unhappy family members, people not understanding you, all of it comes into the same thing.